Hey everybody, I'm JJ Johnson. You're watching RSP Tool and Gear Reviews, formerly known as our Reality Survival. So today I just wanted to talk real quick about all this stuff you're seeing in the news media about, federal agents kidnapping people and martial law on the streets and all this kind of nonsense, really, is what it is. So let's just, a lot of the headlines talking about, federal agents in unmarked uniforms, in unmarked cars, snatching people up and taking them away to never be heard from again, right? That's the narrative that's kind of going around and all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of falsehood in all of this. So I just wanted to kind of go through a little bit of it to kind of let you know how it works in reality, and what's going on in all this thing, so that you guys can understand this a little bit. So first off, as far as the unmarked vehicles go, federal agencies, as a general rule, federal law enforcement agencies, as a general rule, don't own marked vehicles. Now, Border Patrol may be a little different. If they're on the border, they're working on the border, then they might. But most, there's about 113 or so federal law enforcement agencies. A lot of them are OIGs. And the one that we're particularly talking about right now is the Federal Protective Service. And they are an agency that is basically responsible for protecting federal buildings, federal property, monuments, and those kinds of things. And so they have the primary jurisdiction in this case. And what these agents were doing was basically protecting federal buildings. And they've done this for a long, long time. It's not a new thing at all. Pentagon has force protection folks. I mean, a lot of federal buildings have them, right? So the cars is a non sequitur. Pretty much all federal agencies get GSA vehicles from the Government Services Administration, and those are essentially leased vehicles. And that's the program that the government uses for federal agencies to get vehicles, and they have a certain turn-in rotation and all that kind of stuff. And so they've just found over the years that it's the cheapest to do it that way, and that's the way that they do it. I've never, I worked with the FBI for 5 years in Omaha, and I never saw a marked FBI vehicle. Never seen a marked DHS vehicle or a marked ICE vehicle, for that matter. And I've worked with all those agencies pretty closely. So the idea that it's a marked vehicle or an unmarked vehicle is just because people just don't know how federal agencies operate and what the logistics behind it are and all that kind of stuff. So that's a completely non-issue. With the uniforms, the thing with the uniforms is that any tactical uniform that you're going to see with police officers, in most cases anyway, I won't say always, but in most cases, those tactical uniforms are going to have subdued patches, okay? So they're patches that you can, if you're standing next to them, you can see what the patches say, right? If you're speaking to them and those kinds of things. If you're 15 yards away at night with a shaky cell phone camera, you're not going to see their patches, right? So, but generally speaking, the agencies have uniforms that they do identify themselves, right? That is pretty much a standard, regardless of what color the uniform is or anything like that. Whether it's OCPs or whatever, they're almost always multicam, all that. They're almost always going to have a subdued patch on them. Now, a lot of federal agencies have gone to putting your badge number and not your name on it. In the military, you're required to put your name because of Geneva Conventions and all that kind of stuff, but in law enforcement, you're not required to do that necessarily. And so because of the doxing and because people are trying to get information on police and to make that public, they're going with badge numbers nowadays, and a lot of folks are. So that is the part about the uniforms. Now let's talk about the part where they're grabbing people off the street and taking them to never be seen again. First off, you got to put yourself into context of what's going on. You have anti-police riots and demonstrations going on, right? So cops are not going to, for their own safety, if they're smart, they're not going to roll up to an anti-police rally and just talk to a person in front of all these protesters. That's dangerous, not only for the police, but also for the person that they're talking to. So what's a better plan? Well, a better plan is to identify them, wait till they're somewhat separate from a group or whatever, go in, get a hold of them, you detain them safely, you put them in the vehicle, and you move them to another location where there's not a bunch of protesters around, and then you can do your questioning safely in a safe environment, for everybody. Okay, why were these people being arrested in the first place? All right, or detained actually is the more appropriate answer in most of the situations. The reason they're being detained is because they have been identified, or the police at least believe, the agents believe, that these people are the people who have been defacing federal property, and so they are attempting to identify who they are. Now remember, a lot of these protesters dress in black lock, they're all dressed the same, and it's difficult to identify them. So what does a law enforcement, what options do they have? The option that they have is you do the best that you can with the information and the intelligence provided, and you try to identify the people appropriately and safely for everybody. So in these circumstances, the best thing to do is what they're doing. They grab the people, they detain them, they remove them somewhere else, they remove all their clothing and everything like that, they get their ID, and they find out if they're the right person. If they're the right person, then they get booked and they get charged with the crime that they were suspected of. If they were not the right person, which actually has happened multiple times, then the individuals are released and let go again to carry on with their own business. Okay, and that's what we want. That's what we want to happen. We want to identify the right people that are doing the crimes. Okay, you don't want to wrongly accuse somebody and wrongly charge somebody and those kinds of things. Okay, so that's the bottom line on what's going on. And why does this have to happen? Well, the reason this has to happen is because of the particular tactics that the lawless rioters have chosen to use. Right? So they're a victim. They're a victim of their own circumstance. They create situations by dressing alike and looking alike so that nobody can get identified. Okay, so do we just want law enforcement to just say, we can't tell who it is, so we can't arrest anybody, we can't do our job? Okay, well, that's crazy, right? That's crazy talk. Law enforcement officers need to be able to do their job, and they need to be able to do it safely. So they have to adapt their tactics and to go with what is presented to them. If the situation were different, then they could work the situation differently, all right? But nobody needs to be afraid of anything. You shouldn't be afraid of the police. You shouldn't worry about federal agents coming and taking you away or anything like that. Unless you're a rioter who's defacing public or government property, then maybe you should be concerned because they're doing their job, and they're doing their job based on their constitutional mandate to do their job. So that's kind of that. I've also heard some people talking about martial law. They're saying, "Oh, it's martial law in the streets." Well, nothing could be further from the truth. Okay, a lot of people really don't understand what martial law is, and so martial law is when there's a total suspension of civil rights, and the military takes over all functions of government. Okay, that's what martial law is. So, you're basically saying civilian courts are not in session. They're not going on. You suspend habeas corpus. That doesn't happen. All these people that have been arrested all have their due process. They all go through the court system. They all have the ability to submit a writ of habeas corpus. They all have the ability to make a phone call and contact a lawyer. They all have had all their rights, okay? That nothing has changed. The only thing has changed is there was a couple of cell phone videos that look like a good thing for the media to grab onto, and so they take this and they make it seem scary. Well, you know, if you're not breaking the law and you're not demonstrating, it's not even protesting. These guys are rioting, right? They're rioting and they're destroying federal property. If you're not doing that, then you have zero concern to worry about this. And another thing is, so some people are worried about, well, where did they go? How do we know who took them? You know, as a member of the public. Well, like I said, their uniforms are their agencies are on their uniforms if you were close enough. But if you weren't close enough, then it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't make any difference to you. It shouldn't make any difference to you because you're not involved. Like there's no police, the federal agencies have no responsibility to notify the public, hey, we're going to go and arrest this guy and we'll have him in our custody from this time to this time. And if you want to speak to him, you can come here and talk to him. There's never been that precedent. There never should be that precedent. And it would be a dangerous thing to happen anyway. So, I think there's a lot of really bad information flowing around out there, and so I thought that I would take this opportunity to explain my perspective on it, knowing how the system works, knowing what's actually happening, and you know, that kind of thing. So anyway, guys, just wanted to throw that out there. I'm sure that there'll be a bunch of anti-police, anti-government folks who, you know, say that this is not true. And that's fine. You can believe whatever you want to, but what I've told you is factual. And you can believe it or not believe it. It doesn't make any difference one way or another. But that's the reality. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Always appreciate when you click the thumbs up button and subscribe if you are not subscribed to the channel. We'd appreciate it. And if you want to learn about prepping and disaster preparedness, then you can go over to the American Prepping Academy on Patreon. And we've got all different kinds of lessons over there where you can download the lesson. You can download any of the handouts that come with the lesson, and you can put them in an emergency binder or whatever the case may be. And I think we've got over 26 formalized kind of lessons. And then I'm also archiving all of my old reality survival educational content on prepping. So all of that will be over there, and you can watch all of those free of charge without having to sign up if you want. So anyway, take a look at it. It only costs you $1 a month, and if you don't like it, so you know, unsubscribe, and then you'll never get charged anything again. So anyway, guys, take care. We'll see you on another video here shortly.